To me, the most important question that I've wanted to answer as an investor is, why do investors make the same mistakes today that they were making 100 years ago? What I want to talk to you about today in this class is the behavioral side of investing, the psychology of money. And I think that is the answer to that question. Because doing well with money is not about how smart you are. It has nothing to do with where you went to school or how complicated the math equations you are using. That's not what matters. What really makes the biggest difference in investing is the psychology side. It's not about what you know. It's about how you behave. My name is Morgan Housel. I'm the author of the book, The Psychology of Money, and I'm a partner at the Collaborative Fund. And in this talk today, I'm going to walk you through the most important aspects of the behavioral side of money. To me, the most incredible story that summarizes the psychology of money is this. True story. There was a woman named Grace Groner who was born on a farm just outside of Chicago in 1910. And she had a very hard life. She had a difficult life. She was orphaned as a child. She never married. She never had kids. She lived in a one-room house for her entire life. She wore used clothes for her entire life. She worked as a secretary for her entire career. She was a lovely woman. Everyone who knew her said she was a lovely woman. But she had a very humble, low-key life. And Grace Groner died in 2010. She was 100 years old. And when she died, she shocked everyone who knew her, who learned that she left $7 million to charity. And everyone who knew her said, where did this humbled orphan secretary get $7 million from? And they dug through her accounts, her bank accounts, her brokerage statements, and they realized that there was no secret here. There was no lottery winnings. She didn't inherit any money. It was nothing like that. What she did is she took what little money she could save from her job as a secretary. She invested it in the stock market, and she left it alone for 80 years. And that was it. That's her whole story. The second investor that I want to talk to you about as part of this story is a guy named Richard. And Richard had the exact opposite upbringing of Grace. He was born into a very wealthy family. He went to Harvard University. He got his MBA from the University of Chicago. He went to work on Wall Street in the 1980s, and he honestly became one of the most important and powerful men in all of global finance. He was a vice chairman of Merrill Lynch. He ran one of their largest divisions. He retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. That's how successful he was in his career in finance. And now 2 weeks after Grace Groner died and left all of her money to charity, Richard filed for bankruptcy. He told the bankruptcy judge that the financial crisis in 2008 completely wiped him out. He had no income, no assets. He was completely broke, to such an extent that his only ability to feed his family was selling the furniture out of his house on Craigslist. And what I think is so important about those two stories, about Grace and Richard, is this. There is no other industry that exists where that kind of story is even possible. No other industry in the world that is out there where somebody with no education and no background and no experience does so much better and outperforms the person who has the best education, the best background, the best experience. It does not happen in any other field. But what that shows, that's so important, is that doing well with your money is not about what you know. It's not about how smart you are. It's not about where you went to school. That's what Richard had, but it did not matter. Doing well with money overwhelmingly relies on how you behave. Because what Grace had was patience. She didn't have any greed. She could let her money go, a long-term mindset. That was really important. That is all that matters. The thing about behavior, though, is that behavior is hard to teach. You can't really summarize it into charts and formulas. It's kind of a messy topic that kind of gets swept under the rug investing, even if we know it's the most important aspect of investing. One of the most important topics in money that's so easy to overlook and is generally not taught in schools when they're teaching money is this. We tend to teach finance like it's math. And in math, there's one answer for everybody. 2 + 2 = 4, no matter who you are, or where you're from, or how old you are, there's one right answer. That's how we tend to teach finance. And I think that's just wrong. That's not how it works. What is so true in finance is that people from different backgrounds, different parts of the world, different ages, different income levels, are going to come to a completely different answer about what is right for them and what is the right thing to do. And there is not one right answer. I mean, this is really important with myself in the United States versus a lot of you in Brazil. What I have seen in the world has been completely different from what somebody in Australia has seen, or Japan has seen, or China has seen, or Brazil has seen. A totally different view of how the economy works and how the stock market works. One perfect example of this is that my generation in the United States has never really experienced inflation at all. In my entire life, there has never really been any significant inflation. And now if you compare that to other parts of the world, it's the exact opposite. All they have ever known is inflation. And this goes both ways. In Australia, they have not had a recession. Before COVID, they did not have a recession for 30 years. No recessions for 30 years. Whereas in the United States, we had 4 recessions over the last 30 years. And the people in Australia are just as smart as anyone in America. They have the same textbooks, the same information, but they view economic risk in a totally different way. And I think everyone does this. Everyone sees the world through the lens of what they have experienced, what they've seen firsthand. And since everyone has seen a little bit different side of the view, a different view of the world, nobody really understands exactly how the economy works. And I think that is really important. That this is not like math or any other science where you can understand how it works at a fundamental level. Everyone has seen a different side of the world. So people have different goals, different risk tolerances, different aspirations. And this impacts everybody. And I think rather than saying there is one right answer to finance and trying to find that answer, the best that we can do when investing our money and saving our money is to try to be introspective about ourselves and say, what is my view of the world, given what I've seen? What are my goals? What is my risk tolerance? And that's going to be different from yours, which will be different from somebody else's. And that's okay. Rather than trying to find the one right answer, we just have to find what works for yourself. What might work for other people might not apply to you, and that's fine. The way that I invest my money works for me. It fits my personality, it fits my goals, but I have friends who are just as smart as me, or if not smarter than me, that invest their money completely differently. And if there's one thing that I have changed about my views of investing over the last decade, it's this. I don't judge people as much as I used to. I used to think, oh, this is the one right way to invest, and if you're doing it differently, you're wrong. I'm right and you're wrong. And I just don't view it like that anymore. I have these views of like, look, there's a million different ways to invest successfully. And if it fits your personality, great. You should go ahead and do it. I mean, one topic that falls into this, that's part of this, is that when people learn about finance, in college usually, they want to learn how to make rational financial decisions. How do I become more rational? That tends to be people's goals. And I just think that's not the right way to look at it, because if you think about rational financial decisions, what you are saying is there's one right answer and I should go do that thing. But since that's not really how it works, I think the best people can do, rather than being rational, is to be reasonable. If you can make reasonable financial decisions about saving your money, or how much debt you have, or how you invest your money, what your goals are, as long as those things are reasonable and they fit your personality, even if other people disagree with them, if it works for you, that's the best that any of us can do. What's most shocking to me as an American when I travel overseas is how much most people talk about foreign currency rates. The value of their currency relative to other currencies. Nobody in America talks about that, ever. It's not a topic anywhere, but it is for other people. Everyone has their own little view of the world, of how things work, how the economy works, what they expect from the economy, what they expect from the stock market, what they expect from their careers, even if everyone else around the world is experiencing a completely different part of the world and having a completely different view of how the world works. If you think about this then, everyone's view of the world is incomplete. The way that I think the world works is totally incomplete. The way that you think the world works is incomplete. Nobody has a perfect view of how the economy works because we are all prisoners to the dumb luck of what we've happened to experience in our own lives. I can try to empathize with other people and read about what it's like in other countries, but nothing is more persuasive than what I have experienced. Many years ago, I did a talk with Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman is a psychologist who won the Nobel Prize in economics, and he grew up in Nazi-occupied France. And he started talking about how much that made him pessimistic about the world, pessimistic about humanity, because he grew up as a child amidst the Nazis. And of course, that just left him so pessimistic about how things work, more pessimistic than I am. And now I can try to empathize with that, about what it was like to grow up in that situation, what it was like to grow up in a war zone, in poverty. I can try to think about it, but I'm never going to have the emotional scar tissue of someone who actually lived through it that they do. And I think all of us have some version of that. That we're all prisoners to our past when we are thinking about how the world works. And so we asked Kahneman, what can we do about this as investors? How can I try to open up my mind to the rest of the world? And true to his pessimistic self, he basically said, there's nothing you can do about it. Just deal with it. It's just a fact of life. But we pushed him a little harder. We said, no, what are two things that I can do? One is talk to people who are in a different situation than you are, particularly people from a different generation or a different country than you are. Those are the people who've had a very different experience in the economy than you have. And just by trying to understand their views of the world, where they see the world going, you're kind of opening up your horizons to different parts of the world that you had never thought about. The other thing you talked about was having someone in your life who's in a different emotional situation than you are. Someone who's not in your family, not your coworker, who you can talk to your money about, who you can talk about your money with, who doesn't have the same emotional baggage that you do when you're dealing with your money, and the same biases and misconceptions that you have gained from your view of the world. If you can talk to someone who's in a different emotional state than you are, I think you are much more likely to make better decisions with your money.